Mr. Roby, can we start today's meeting?
Roll call for the City Council meeting of Wednesday, October 7th, 2015 at 9 a.m. Mr. Brennan, Mrs. Rancunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mirsky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation and Pledge of Allegiance.
This morning, we ask that we remember those in our community who are less fortunate than we are. In every way, we ask that we remember those who've lost loved ones since the last time we were in these chambers. And we also ask our God and Creator to give us the wisdom and the proper information to make the best decisions for the citizens of the city of Erie.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes for the City Council meeting of September 16th, 2015, and bills for payment on October 9th and 16th, 2015. Mrs. Rancunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mirsky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan.
Okay, thank you. Are there any requests for repository sales this morning? Are there any requests for repository sales? Hearing none, we will go to Citizens to be Heard portion of the meeting, and there were two people who had signed up on the agenda. Mr. Randy Barnes is not here. He had indicated he would not be here today. So, Amy?
Council, first I'd like to thank you for the notions that you took in regards to the loitering problem at Palace and removing the bench, and for that I thank you and those involved, especially Ms. Kunko. I'm here today to address about a small crimes task force. In the city of Erie, we have a problem with not just loitering but panhandling. It's some of the reasons why over the years we've had the things done to the city that we've had done, the moving of the buses from State to Peach and French, taking out Perry Square, because there was a huge amount of loitering and a huge amount of other things going with that kind of territory that people who loiter and people who do other crimes do. I think one of the things that our city has been trying to readdress is recreating its image. And in order to become a better city, what we ought to do as a city is call ourselves on the small stuff as well as the big stuff. You can't physically remake a city and have its insides not be right and expect people to move in. You come to State Street at night, and there's all sorts of littering and loitering and panhandling. There's even panhandling during the day. There was a fight at 10th and French bus stop sometime in the past 2 weeks that the police had to be called. I'd like to somehow get your help in designing a small crimes task force to help eliminate these small yet big effects on our city. It's these small issues that turn into bigger issues, and then we have things that end up like how the East Side has ended up with major crimes happening on it. These small crimes turn into big crimes and have big effects on our city. If we took the notions to have penalties as far as the legislative side is concerned at a more poignant point, as it was explained by another citizen the last time we met, not just in that regard legislatively, but taking proactive steps as well, having police on the beat more often in the city during the night, during the day, trying to redirect these people that are on the streets to shelters, have more places like that. I see you invested over $250,000 for the Perry Square project. Did anyone take into account that all those benches and the shelter that the stage is going to be itself may attract the same problem that we were dealing with the gazebo. It's just a thought. Especially with 10 benches now and the actual structure, those that are homeless would be more than driven to that kind of thing. I've been there, done that myself as far as being homeless. I never had to resort to loitering, thank God. But, you know, there's people in our city that we're not taking care of. And if we want to attract people who are of bigger and better wealth, then we need to take care of the small ones as well as the larger people in our cities and our stature. And so perhaps we could combine forces with the police and with volunteer citizens to make the city a better place. And with that, I give you my gratitude and thanks for letting me serve.
Thank you. Other citizens to be heard.
Richard Wagner, 42nd State. In regards to what Amy just said, I never get downtown anymore. Below 38th Street, I really don't venture that way. Had to go to Hammond Hospital Sunday afternoon. My wife's stepdaughter is in the hospital. Driving back up, there was a woman at 6th and State who couldn't even stand up. She was delirious at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Amy. I just shook my head and thought, what the heck is this world coming to? But I don't think she was drunk. I think she was probably on drugs. And if somebody wasn't there holding her up, she would have fell to the ground. And that's in view of this place. And that's happening. So I feel sorry for you, Amy. I want to thank council for their votes supporting the mayor as it pertains to the curfew in the city of Erie. It really seemed to me it was a no-brainer. Also, the city has taken another important step by helping the Mothers Against Teen Violence group grow into what I consider as becoming the community against teen violence. It's nice to see all of the different organizations working together to bring calm in many ways back to our city. It's time for honesty to enter into our discussions about our city. I'm going to repeat myself. 99,542 residents now reside in Erie. That's 40,000 less than the 70s. Let's assume that the average family size is 4. That means that there could be as many as 10,000 homes in Erie without people to live in them. Bradley's Market, Sanders Market, Jerry Lou Fruit, Erie County Farms is in trouble, Erie Business Center, now the Puffer Belly. These are all institutions that are memories that couldn't afford to do business in our city. Here's some of the good news, if you can call it that the citizens of Erie have been subjected to. We've had $500,000 since 2010 in the coffers of the Redevelopment Authority to put new windows and repoint the bricks at the Juniors building. Should have used that a lot sooner. 18th and State, the old Security People's Building, is being bought by a nonprofit and soon to be turned into a daycare facility by the St. Martin Center. Mr. Baddens from the school district is telling us all not to be alarmed by the declining test scores. It's just a readjustment, a new starting point. Is it really? Kathy Dahlkamper told us she needs 19 more employees and a modest 9% tax increase. Isn't that wonderful? The regional chambers, Ms. Chafee, was on the news talking about an educated workforce, that being a big obstacle for economic development in the city. Who is she kidding? Also, Lord Corporation is offering early retirement incentives. My personal view of this is just a blip on their radar screen. They did make a commitment and a huge investment to Erie County. Lastly, County Council wants to take over control of the EMTA. I certainly wish they would have expressed their interest in this project before the city and its residents decided to build a $70 million bus terminal within the city limits. The county should have a say in the operation, but never control it. I just pay my water, sewer, and trash bills. I want to thank you for going after all the delinquent payers. But you have made it difficult for taxpayers to pay their bills because your changes in the collection process led to this expense coming in 1 month instead of being spread out where you could pay it over a period of time. I will use myself as an example. My total yearly expense for water, sewer, and trash will be $1,010. That's for a family of 2 senior citizens that watch their usage, don't water their lawn, don't have big gardens, wash a car occasionally. We're careful. I started to dig into the number a little more. Do any of you realize that the city taxes on a $90,000 home in the city of Erie run about $1,000? That means to me that in reality, a $90,000 home in the city really doesn't cost $1,000 in taxes. It costs double that, or $2,000, just to sit in the city. I don't think you have to go back too far in the city's history when water, sewer, and trash were part of your taxes. We separated, pulled them out, created authorities, and what do we have? An out-of-control water department, who, by the way, just paid 250% more than the mayor thought for the Mill Creek Water Authority. It's not fair. It's not good business sense. And I want all of you to remember that when you're gone in 30 years, when the lease between the city and the water authority expires, and maybe they decide not to renew it, that the mismanagement and high costs associated with the water authority will come back to haunt future councils when they regain control of the water department, because everyone should remember we're leasing this asset to someone. The city still owns it. And thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens to be heard this morning? Any other citizens to be heard? Are there any other citizens to be heard? Seeing none, Mr. Roby, if we can continue with the rest of the meeting.
All right, ordinances for final passage. Council File 15928, official ordinance number 26/2015, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $400,000 from the general fund account fund balance and providing for the expenditure thereof. By Mr. Mursky and seconded by Mr. Witherspoon, that Council File Ordinance Bill number 15928, and now known as Official File Ordinance number 26/2015, be finally passed by the City Council. Mrs. Rankunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan. City Council passed Official File Ordinance number 26/2015 finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council File number 15929, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $250,000 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue to account number 3929, operating transfer BUDAG for the Perry Square project. By Mr. Jones and seconded by Mrs. Rankunso, the Council File Ordinance number 15929, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Mrs. Rankunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Potowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan. City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance number 15929 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council File number 15930, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $14,284.70 from unappropriated and unanticipated revenue from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency to be used for 29 Metro nozzles. By Mr. Mursky and seconded by Mr. Witherspoon, that Council File number 15929, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Mrs. Rankunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kotowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan. City Council read and adopt Council File Ordinance number 15930 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council File number 15931, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $40,527 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof, 2015 Justice Assistance Grant. By Mr. Potowski and seconded by Mrs. Rankunso, that council file ordinance number 15931, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Mrs. Rancunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 15931 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council file 15932, an ordinance appropriated the sum of $32,514.67 from the Urban Forest Contribution Program account fund balance and providing for the expenditure thereof. By Mr. Mursky and seconded by Mr. Witherspoon, that council file ordinance number 15932, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Mrs. Rancunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 15932 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. That'll take us to new business, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to move the balance of the agenda.
We have a second, Mr. Jones. Do we have any separations? Hearing none. I'm sorry, Ms. Kunze.
Just for explanation, I'd like to separate number 1 under new business.
So from one new business, we'll discuss that. We want to vote on the balance of the agenda?
Moving in the balance of the agenda, Mrs. Rancunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan.
We want to go back to one in new business for discussion.
Okay, I'll read it and then we'll have our discussion. By Mrs. Rancunso and seconded by Mr. Winarski. Resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the proper City of Erie officials and the Erie County Tax Claim Bureau are hereby authorized to forgive and exonerate the below-listed tax liens together with penalties, interest, and fees that have accrued against the identified properties which have been acquired at various times by the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Erie for purposes of mitigating blight. Discussion?
Yes, Ms. Kunze.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make a note that these are redevelopment authority properties. All but one of them are vacant lots. These taxes were assessed either after the authority had declared these properties blight and condemned, or before they acquired them, that they were already on these delinquent taxes already existed before the authority acquired the property. So in order for the authority to be able to convey these to new owners and get these back on the tax rolls, they're asking us to forgive these. Most of these are vacant, so most likely someone will be able to pick it up and add to their yard or whatever. So we want to be able to move these into taxable value again.
Thank you for the explanation. Any more discussion on this item? Hearing none. Ms. Roby, if you want to vote on one on new business.
Roll call. Mrs. Rancunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Brennan. That'll take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Roby. If we want to go to Mr. Witherspoon.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Mr. Mursky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things to report. I attended the Mercier's Area Neighborhood Watch meeting, and I just wanted to let the community know that the Neighborhood Resource Organization is an organization that stands ready to help communities, help neighborhoods, and they're based out of the old St. John's School, and you contact Dave Dieter. He's been working, as I've been going to the different neighborhood watch groups, I said we're on the circuit. He makes the rounds with me to all these neighborhood watch meetings, and they're really invested in the community and dedicated to supporting the grassroots efforts of our Neighborhood Watch and helping these neighborhoods to stabilize, grow, and provide assistance in any way that they can. So please take advantage of that. From the Convention Center Authority, they have a bid in with Pittsburgh for an international hockey tournament, and that's the decision on those bids should be coming up within the next month. That would be a big boost to the city of Erie. It's an international hockey tournament, so we have it would be hockey players from all over the not just the United States, but all over the world would be coming to Pittsburgh, and Erie would be the secondary site to host. We're in competition with Buffalo and St. Louis for that, so look forward to hopefully getting that bid. That would be a big boost to the city. Erie Otters are off to a great start, so if you're out, I encourage you to support our local teams because that's part of what makes Erie a great place. Are these our sports teams? I want to thank our streets department for the hard work that they did this summer. If you've seen the streets, the ones that they've paved, they're fantastic. I know a lot of the work was contracted out, but we do have our own streets crew that does go out and pave, and I had a chance to see the work they do. They're very efficient, and within their turnaround time's a matter of 2 days. They mill it the one day, pave it the next day, and they deserve kudos for the work that they do. The fire department also, just to recognize them, they had a very nice article in the Erie Times News about engine company number 8. Our guys are top-notch, and everyone, nobody wants to pay for fire service until you need fire service, until your house is on fire. And let me tell you, these guys are top-notch, and I just want to thank them for the work that they're doing. And finally, just to recognize our ethnic heritage. This month, September 15th through October 15th, is Hispanic Heritage Month. They didn't have a festival this year, unfortunately, so I didn't get my empanadas and my pollo y arroz. But I want to recognize the Hispanic community for all the good work that they do. And October is also Polish Heritage Month, and everyone knows I like a good pierogi. And when my wife and I went to Poland as part of our honeymoon, the culture there, they really respect the United States, and they're amazed at how we've maintained our the Polish traditions. I say ours because I'm Polish. The Polish traditions here in America. And so to those two groups, I recognize them and thank them for their contributions to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mirsky. Ms. Kunzow.
Thank you, Mr. President. No real report, just a couple comments. I have, Ms. Beck would know I've been sending some code enforcement complaints. I know that we talk a lot about issues of property, maintaining your property and making sure you're taking care of your issues in terms of grass cutting and maintenance and any kind of code violations. So you'll continue to see those from me. I think one of the things that when we went to the meetings with the comprehensive plan, it really struck me that what the consultant was saying was that we need to make sure we're taking care of our properties in our city of Erie. So our code enforcement office is complaint driven, so we need to let them know if we see a place that is looking dilapidated and not taken care of, grass not cut, we need to let them know. So continue to, unfortunately, you're going to be hearing from me a lot. So I thank you for that. One thing I just wanted to mention, the issues that one of our speakers today, Ms. Comptroller, had spoke about was the small crimes, and that is sort of the same thing. If we allow vagrancy and we allow blight and we allow panhandling and loitering and all those things, those are quality of life type of crimes, and people, will be afraid to come into our downtown if they don't feel that they'll be safe here because of those nuisance type of issues. So that's something to continue to look into. One of the other items that's been brought to council's attention, and I just want to mention it for the record, is the Firefighter Museum on 4th and Cherry. I know that they are in need of some repairs to their brickwork, and certainly looking for donations to do that. They have reached out, I think, to the community and to their members who are members of the museum. But I just wanted to let everybody know that they really do a great job to keep that museum going, and appreciate any contribution certainly to help them with their project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunso. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Monday, a group of us, a special committee from City Council, will be meeting with folks over at the county concerning the EMTA question and / questions. So I kind of look forward to that because I see it's going to be, I'd imagine it's going to be a pretty impassioned conversation around the topic. And so this is not a new topic. It's been a source of conversation most of this year in maybe more private settings. So I look forward to being able to, in my opinion, share the city's perspective on how things are going, can be improved, and how we can work together. So I think that conversation will be important. I did attend a conference in Pittsburgh last week. It was the National Juvenile Justice Service Conference, and I went because of what I do outside of City Council, working with youth in the human service field, but also with my City Council hat on. They had a few sessions on how municipalities, city, local, and county governments can work and be more involved in dealing with youth and helping to. We talk a lot about adults who have been incarcerated or have been in the justice system, and they try to come home and reorient and reenter community. We forget a lot about, regrettably these days, a lot of teens and young people are coming home from detention centers and from residential placements, and they also need to be reentered into community appropriately and effectively. And I think. And that brought a lot of thoughts to my mind. A lot of the young men and women who are youth in our community that are acting out in such extremely violent and negative ways, many of them have a history of placement and probably not a really good history of reentering appropriately into community. So there were a lot of ideas that I was able to glean from that conference. I'll share with this body as well as with the mayor's office. There's, again, some legislative and some municipal ideas that were shared in that conference. So look forward to sharing that. For Mrs. Beck, in relation to the administration, I got a phone call from a grandmother. And about 29th, I think some of us may have gotten it, about 29th and Liberty, the speeding, and then I spoke with her. Then I got a phone call 2 days later from the granddaughter who made her call me. And she said, well, I wasn't here when you called the other day, but I need to talk to you. And she was giving me the business a little bit. She's like 9 or something.
Mr. Jones, I did speak with the traffic engineer yesterday, and gave her their number to speak with them and talk about enforcement of the speeds, just so you know.
Wonderful. No, I appreciate that. And
Mr. President, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
I received the same phone call, and I have invited her to council because I was very impressed with a 6-year-old and her conversation.
No, absolutely. It was it's being handled. So 29th and Liberty. Yeah, I mean, it's very residential, and I go through it all the time. I have a son who goes to Perry and in Central, and so it can be pretty intense flying through there. I actually got hit on that corner before, and the person kept going, but that's another side story. So again, it's being handled, and so I just wanted to bring that up for our conversation. What else? Finance meeting right after this meeting. I initially, last session, wanted to have a larger scoped finance meeting. That didn't play out and won't play out properly, but we will have a meeting in relation to our current financial state and the book for this month or last month, and also looking forward because the budget sessions are coming very shortly, and so we want to have some conversation around structure, ideas, and what the administration has been or has in preparation for that process. So that will happen immediately after this meeting as well. I attended, lastly, the school district Fund Our Schools event. We had different opinions on whether a city council should or shouldn't be involved, whether, who, what. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what office or what place we're in, we have to be concerned about our kids. And there's always political stuff that's involved in these kinds of conversations. But I think the real conversation needs to be held that our children should not be the ones who are missing out because of impasses and political differences in ideology. So I did attend that, and I just wanted to speak about a young lady who represented the youth of the district, and she did an amazing job, and she was a great example of the kids that we need to continue to either, that are on her level, continue to support them to be great and greater, and then those kids who aren't on her level to rise to that. And so we need to find ways to support our kids in any and every way possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone, once again. Main thing I'd like to just report on, I did attend the EMTA meeting this past week, as well as we met with the Executive Director, Mike Tan, this morning, just giving us council update on the phase one of the project, which is 99% of the way completed, as well as phase two of the expansion project that is all done paper-wise. Now it just has to be put into form. One thing I think this council has learned in the couple of years that we've been dealing with Mr. Tan and the EMTA is it's been a little more transparency and updates on what's been going on at the E, and I think what we've been getting is, in all honesty, a lot of positives. They're doing a over $60 million project right here in the city of Erie. I know County Council would like to meet with us, and we will oblige and do that this coming Monday. Not sure, we're sure what they want, but we have something here, and the core of it is in the city of Erie that has 70% ridership for the majority of the year. So we are the core of the EMTA, and it is regionalized to the extent where we have branched out, and within the next month or so we're going to be in Corey as far as Corey. So, I mean, once again, it's something that the authority, the Transit Authority, has been working on, has been improving. Another thing we found out this morning, they're going to be offering a service for the downtown area when, say, 2 or 3 different big events are going on, whether it be at the Playhouse, the Erie Insurance Arena, or the Warner Theater. They're going to get a shuttle service where it would be no charge to the citizens that are going to these events, and whether you park down at the intermodal or you need that transportation, you're elderly and you need that transportation just from the parking garage, say, to the Warner, they are going to be offering that service, which I think is pretty cool. Once again, like I said, they've been keeping us updated, and the transparency has been there for us on council, and we look forward to continuing that relationship. With that, other than that, that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winarski. Mr. Kwiatkowski.
Yeah, it's kind of a busy couple of weeks. We attended a fire pension board along with the city controller. It's been a rough month or so for them, as it has been with much of the country with the shape of the economy. But outside of that, they're proceeding very well. I attended the Mercyhurst Neighborhood Watch meeting with Councilman Mirsky, and like he explained in his report, there's a lot of positives coming out of there. We need to do that, otherwise that's another neighborhood that we can start marking off the calendar that'll be in trouble. Attended the legislative breakfast with President Woolman of Edinboro University, and was pleased to find out that the university is making great progress and thinking about expanding their investment at the Perico Center, which is a lot closer to Erie than the main campus. So there's a lot of good things coming out of Edinboro, and it was a pleasure to meet many of the legislators, especially on the state level, to tell them our concerns, what I like to see done to help third-class cities. Attended the Airport Authority meeting and was really amazed to find out that, a lot of people expected more airplanes and more flights coming out of Erie with the new runway, but the problem now is, as has been said on national news, there's not a shortage of airplanes. but there's a shortage of pilots, and this is causing smaller cities like Erie to feel the brunt of the problem. It seems like they can't train them fast enough or procure enough from the military after they retire. So until that situation is averted, we shouldn't look forward to anything long range around the country. Attended a Zoo Society meeting, and everything is proceeding well there. They've had some births of new animals and making great progress to their annual fundraiser, and they're a well-run organization. I was very impressed with the members of the board. I'd like to also thank the office of Andy Zimmerman. I tore into him last meeting with Just Cause, but he took care of the problem, and I hope it doesn't take as long next year. I'd like to thank the Erie Police for taking care of the couple cars I turned in that have been sitting there for months on end. That shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have to take a city councilman to get action. But thank you anyway. And I'd like to thank the Erie firemen. As Mr. Mirsky said, they got a nice article in the paper. I happened to be there the day that fireman took that young man's bicycle and fixed it with tools from the truck. Nobody heard about that for a long time. I'm glad that they finally got their day in the media, because they do a lot of that. When I was a young man, we could stop at the firehouse. They do everything from blowing up your tires to telling you stories, advising you on life, and everything else. But they were great guys and always were ready to help the neighborhood, and they were a beacon of a place where people could hang out in safety. And finally, as Mr. Mirsky said, this Heritage Month, the Polonaise Ball will be held on October 24th. It's our 50th anniversary. It'll be held at 3rd Street Falcons. If anybody wants any information, they can contact me at home, or I'll be glad to fill them in. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kwiatkowski. Ms. Stankiewicz?
I have no report.
No report, okay. Administration? Jill?
Just want to say thank you to the Public Works Department for all of the hard work they put into help us pink the park on Friday. It was bitter cold out there, but our guys single-handedly, it seemed like, got the bandwagon set up, kept everyone out of the fountain, had that all blocked off, so that wasn't a part of the event this year due to the construction that's happening in Perry Square. But as you know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I just want to thank all of our guys for going the extra effort for all of the asks that I had last week. Also wanted to let Council know that Gannon University has selected a consultant for the R West Bayfront neighborhood, and I can send this information to you by email so you have all of the contact information. But a committee from Gannon, Hands, the MLK Center, and area residents reviewed the proposals, and city architecture from Cleveland, along with urban partners from Philadelphia, will be selected as a team consultant. I'm not sure how that's going to happen with both organizations from such a long distance, but they're working together. City architecture will soon begin the process to comb through the neighborhood, find out the plans, the problems, the benefits, and get to work on Gannon's 5-year plan for the R West Bayfront neighborhood. And again, I'll get all that information to you. Erica Ramallah from Gannon University would be the contact if you'd like to meet with any of their consultants. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Beck. I have a few items to report here. I attended the event at the Jefferson Education Society called Metro 100. It's a new event, brought together different community representatives and leaders, and also with Bruce Katz, Mark Monroe of the Brookings Institution, and also a couple other speakers that were there to talk about different subjects. But the three topics were advanced industries, neighborhood health, and leadership. Advanced industries is really any type of organization that puts a lot of money into research and development, and of course we have a lot of that going on in our city. But I think the discussion there was trying to ways to improve, to promote and attract more companies that will provide jobs, because of course any job in advanced industries is a little more higher paying. Also, there's a lot of other creative ideas discussed, as I mentioned, for neighborhoods. And this event is going to continue. There's going to be future events. One of the questions I asked on leaving is, do we think this should occur quarterly or yearly or whatever? So, that's definitely something I'll look forward to partaking in. Also, to continue on, I know as other council member mentioned, the MTA meeting's coming up Monday. I'm looking forward to hearing the results of our committee meeting with the county council. I want to also report I received several comments about the downtown lighting issues. There's a couple areas that we're trying to improve upon lighting because of different parking situations. So I'm trying to kind of work with several property owners and trying to see if there's any possible grants out there, or at least steer them in the right direction to see what we can do to help that situation. Of course, if there's areas that aren't improved with lighting, they seem unsafe, and they will be unsafe until we do whatever we can to improve that. And with that, that's my report, and we will be at the end of today's meeting. Thank you.
City Council adjourns at 9:47. Mr. Brennan, Mr. Sorenkunso, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Mursky, Mr. Winarski, Mr. Witherspoon.